Most people ever heard about scarecrows. Scarecrows are like a biggest figurine that is on a pole and has been looking over the cornfield. Sometimes you begin to wonder why is it staring there? What do you think it's gonna do? Obviously, it's gonna scare off those crows away, so that way they won't mess up the cornfield. Sometimes there are a lot of things happen during the film, but I've experienced it ever since I watched the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It was a movie that is from 2019. Ever since when I was watching it, since I was like, I would say 13. So without further ado, I think I might tell you this interesting story that is from the movie, but unfortunately, it was from Scary Stories 3, More Tales to Chill Your Bones. So it may tell you a little bit more strange. Sometimes it's a little more chills down your spine. So I know for a fact that there's a group of teenage kids who really think who could take up a little responsibility trying to mess up the cornfield or trying to mess around with a scarecrow. Which of course something didn't happen to that kid because it becomes a scarecrow, which of course you know it. So anyways, I've been informed that there are a lot of things that's been going on with this story. So without further hesitate, I think this is the most interesting story that I think most people ever will remember and hear of it at the most time. This is a story about Harold the Scarecrow and its director, Mark Steger. When it get hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to the cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stay there with the two cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, it was boring. All day the two men tended their cows. At night, they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. Everything remained the same until Thomas had an idea to make a human-sized scarecrow. Thomas came in on the joy of making it, put it in the garden to scare the crows. When Alfred heard this, he decided to base the appearance of Harold, a farmer that they both hated. They made a doll out of an old sack of stuff with straws and gave the Scarecrow Harold's characteristic along with naming it after him. Each morning on their way to the pastures, they tied Harold to the pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought them inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it's raining. When they're feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" Then the other, making believe that he was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice, "Very slowly." They both would laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick or punch him. Sometimes one of them wouldn't take a food that they were eating, which they both were sick of, and smear it on Doll's face. "How did you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "Well, you better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night after Thomas had wet Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," Thomas said. "And that will be that. Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on, but when we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind for now. Let's just keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the dog grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe the mouse or some insect has gotten inside Harold and were making these sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought them back to the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harold is growling," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Or maybe it's just my imagination." "Or our imagination," Alfred replied. "We have been up here on this mountain for too long." The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed out on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs all day and all night. He trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in the far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he could do or would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cow down to the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped or a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Neither one would go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. "There is nothing to be afraid of," they told one another. After all, what could the doll do? They decided to draw straws to see which one would go back, and when they did, Thomas was one to go back. After Thomas told Alfred that he would catch up with him, Alfred walked toward the valley. But when Alfred came to rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harold kneed and scratched out of a bloody skin to dry. in the sun. A quick a quick note. The Harold the Scarecrow was basically a short story that I think that most of the scary stories to tell in the dark basically has like a short stories that I think it might be a little bit more short interested that you guys might be a little bit more understand, so that way I won't have to read the longest scary stories that I think I should tell you all. So there's another scary story that I think I want to tell you this tonight, and this one is called The Hook. It's about some person has a left hand, but it replaced it with a hook. So this story is called The Hook, and its director, Alvin Schwartz. Donald and Sarah went to the movies. Then they went for a ride in Donald's car. They park up on a hill at the edge of the town. From there, they could see the lights up and down the valley. Donald turned on the radio and found some music, but an announcer broke in with the news bulletin. A murderer has escaped from the state prison. He was armed with a knife and is headed south on foot. His left hand was missing. In its place, he wore a hook. Let's roll up the windows and lock the doors, said Sarah. That's a good idea, said Donald. That prison isn't too far away, said Sarah. Maybe we really should go home. But it's only 10 o'clock, said Donald. I don't care what time is it. She says, I want to go home. Look, Sarah, said Donald. He's not going to climb all the way up here. Why would he do that? Even if he did, all doors are locked. How can he get in? Donald, he could take that hook and break through the window and open the door, she said. I'm scared and I want to go home. Donald was annoyed. Girls always afraid of something, he said. He started the car. Sarah thought she heard someone or something screeching at her door. Did you hear that? She asked as they roared away. Sounds like somebody's trying to get in. Oh, sure, said Donald as soon as they got to her house. Would you like to come in and have some cocoa? She said. No, he said. I've got to get home. He ran around to the other side of the car and let her out. Hanging on a door handle was a hook.